Hello, cadets and cadets. I'm Cadet Captain Mirad Maragman, 20 years of age, born on March 24, 2002, from Dorong Punta Mangatarang, Pangasinan, taking course of Bachelor of Science in Criminology, second year college at the University of Luzon. For the classroom rules, always turn off your cell phones. If you feel sleepy, just do some exercises, and if you're cold by nature, just go to the restroom. For the safety precautions, in case of fire in your area, immediately go to the fire exit. And if in case of an earthquake, do the drop, cover, and hold. Objectives: to learn the importance of a small unit leadership, to know the responsibility and the characteristic of a good leader, to help on how to be a responsible and a good leader someday. The scope of our topic is Army leadership and the 10 principles of Army leadership. So, our topic is the small unit leadership. What is the purpose of small unit leadership? The goal of leadership is to raise a unit to the highest state of combat effectiveness. The military leader must build a command relationship between himself and his men that will result in immediate and effective action on their part to carry out his will in any situation. Next, what is the meaning of team leader? A team leader has an overview of a group of people, motivates, gives instructions, and monitors performance. It might be an official title change or a delegation exercise from your management, but either way, being a team leader separates you from your peers as a trusted person to manage a project of group of people. Next, what makes a good team leader? Team leaders who are emotionally intelligent better manage stress, engage their team members, and optimize their team's performance. Relationship building skills. Team leaders have to build relationship within their teams, with other team leaders, and across the organization. And now let's watch a video presentation about leaderships and the 10 principles of military leadership.
Okay, let's get started. So, where we left off last week was the principles of mission command, right? And we talked about how this is a vision of your organization, right? This is what you're trying to achieve. This is what you're aiming at. Okay, you want an organization where you're using mission orders, you build a cohesive team through mutual trust, your leaders accept prudent risk, you enable subordinates to exercise discipline initiative, you're providing clear intent, and you create shared understanding and shared visualization. So the Army's really good at teaching leaders these principles, for the most part. Like, you'll see them in the career course. You said you saw them in ROTC. So this is making its way out. I think this is one of the things that General Perkins has brought to the force. It used to be command and control. They moved to mission command, and I think that is a phenomenal move. But one thing that I think is lacking sometimes is they don't really go into, or Army leaders a lot of times don't go into, how do you build a cohesive team through mutual trust? Right? We just throw it up there and we're like, oh, build a cohesive team through mutual trust, exercise discipline initiative, right? Just do those things. Well, especially if you're young leaders who don't have a lot of experience, those are hard things to do, right? Those are very difficult, and it takes time and experience to really get after that problem set. So what we're going to talk about today is really how to do that. And do you guys have any idea how you would do that? Like, just throw out a couple things.
Do like a leader's reaction course?
Okay, that's like a technique that you could use, a leader's reaction course. There's a key word in there, leader.
Just build relationships, take the time to build meaningful relationships.
Okay, build some meaningful relationships.
Kind of like the example that I used last week is like having like some type of crucible or like initiation into the unit so they can be part of the team. And
absolutely. So maybe some like sharing and hardship with your soldiers, things like that. Okay, so I'll give you a very broad answer. So you guys are giving me kind of like how to do that, right? Conceptually, the way that you do this is through Army doctrinal leadership. Okay, and that's why I've titled this class today, What is Leadership? Okay, so what is leadership?
Process of influencing people while providing. It's process of influencing people while providing motivation.
Purpose, direction,
motivation.
All right, so the definition of leadership is the process of influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. All right, so I'm going to write it up here. And we're going to kind of break it down a little bit and go into this. And we'll break down the definition and explain it bit by bit. Purpose. All right, so we're going to start with that. We're going to start there. All right, why is leadership a process? Why does the Army define it as a process? Like, why isn't it a skill or something like that? Why is it a process? Any ideas?
Because it's something that it takes time to learn and develop and to grow.
Absolutely. So it takes time, right? A process is something that you can analyze. It's something that you can look at. It's something that you can improve. It's where you can identify weaknesses and make it better. That's why the Army identifies leadership as a process rather than a skill or something that's innate. Because the Army's leadership doctrine says that anyone can be taught to be a leader, right? Anybody can be taught to be a leader. The Army's leadership doctrine is phenomenal. I think that Chapter 6 of ADRP 6-22 is probably the best and most concise thing I've ever read on leadership. And I'll put those up for you guys. Let's see right here. So ADP is Army Doctrine Reference Publication. ADRP is Army Doctrine Publication, Army Doctrine Reference Publication, and then FM is obviously Field Manual, and they're all 6-22. And these are all phenomenal references, especially Chapter 6 of ADRP 6-22. All right, so a process, right, of influencing people. And we'll get to the influence in a minute. But by providing purpose. So what does it mean to provide purpose? What does that mean?
To give them a reason of like why they're doing what they're doing.
You
So
hit
they
it.
kind of
Why?
have an understanding.
Why? Why are you doing what you're doing, right? I was listening to a talk that General Perkins gave at Fort Benning to BOLIC and MCCC students. And he was talking about how he visited Google, and what Google does a good job of is explaining what they are for, right? What is your organization for? Why do you do what you do? Okay, and that's the purpose. A purpose is a vision of where you want the organization to go. It's a vision. All right, that's a key word we're going to come back to. All right, so the next thing, purpose. Next is direction. All right, so what do we mean by direction? Like, what does that mean?
So that after they understand why, you kind of give them a little like a way or a method of doing.
Absolutely,
what it is that they-
you're exactly right. Okay, so the direction is how. How are you going to do what it is that? How are you going to achieve that vision, right? What's the plan? What's the process that we're going to use to achieve that vision? So purpose, direction, and then motivation. So what do we mean by motivation?
How I see it is kind of like it's kind of giving them more of like kind of same thing with purpose. It's giving them kind of like an incentive or kind of like helping them make it their own so they can feel that they're involved and that they can.
Absolutely. So motivation is a tough one. I really struggled with this when I was sort of doing some analysis on this, is because it's not the why, right? It's not, you've already provided them a why with the purpose. You're providing that vision. The motivation is providing some type of inspiration or some type of reason to accomplish that vision. Like not explaining why the vision's important, but explaining why they should participate in it, right? And that could be positive or negative. So let's put inspiration up here. Inspiration. Okay. Motivation to accomplish. mission or improve the organization? I think it's and improve the organization. The organization. All right. So, are you always going out, seizing hills, accomplishing missions, doing tactical stuff? No, right? Most of what we do is improving the organization. So I would argue when you get tasks from your higher headquarters, like small tasks to complete to turn in certificates or things like that, I would say that that's all about really improving the organization, right? It's moving towards readiness. It's not necessarily accomplishing the mission. So when you're looking at improving the organization, you're really looking at systems and processes, right? Which, when you talk about the difference between leadership and management, leaders make positive change, managers manage existing systems. That's sort of a good way to explain that. Okay, so we're going to go back to, we've talked about purpose, direction, motivation a little bit. We're going to talk about influencing. Okay, so what is influence? Like, how do you influence somebody? Okay, so the Army has really good doctrine on this. Okay, and this all comes from Chapter 6 of ADRP 6-22. The Army says that there are 9 doctrinal methods of influence. Okay, and we're going to talk about all 9 methods of influence here. Okay, and we're going to build to something so it builds on itself. All right, methods of influence. Okay, so the first method of influence is what the Army calls pressure. Okay, so what do you think pressure is? It's not a trick question. Like, what do you think pressure is? How to influence someone by applying pressure? What does that mean?
Applying stress.
Okay, applying. What do you mean by stress? So let's say I want to get you to do something, right? I want to get you to do make me a product or to do something, right? Do some task for me. What do you think? If I was going to pressure you to do it, how would I do that?
By giving us a timeline.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what the manual says, right? Saying, look, you're going to go do this. You're going to do it now, or you're going to do it in this time frame, or bad things are going to happen, right? Or X, Y, Z is going to happen to you, or we'll stay late, right? That's what pressure is. All right. The next is legitimating. What do you think legitimating is? So legitimating is when I give you that task. So we'll all start with I'm telling you to do something, right? Legitimating is, I'm a captain, you're a lieutenant. You have to do what I say. Go. Right? That's what legitimating is saying. I have a legitimate authority over you, and you have to do what I tell you to do. Okay. The next is exchange. All right. Exchange. TJ, what do you got for exchange? What do you think?
Maybe like a quid pro quo type, like, if you do this now, I'll do this for you later.
Absolutely. It's exactly that, right? Do this, and then you get this. It's almost, it's a little bit like pressure, but instead of saying, hey, bad things are going to happen if you don't do this, it's like, hey, if you do this, then I'll get you a day off or get a late call or something like that, right? So that's what exchange is. Helps you can spell exchange. Okay, the next one is, all right, personal appeals. So what do you think personal appeals are? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's saying, this is sort of something that you would use with a peer, right? Hey man, help me out. Like, I've helped you out before, help me out, or something like that. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, personal appeal, saying, look, help me out, do this for me, right? That's what a personal appeal is. All right, so the next thing is, after personal appeals, is collaboration. Collaboration. All right, so the collaboration is when, so I use this collaboration pretty frequently. So I'll give you a task, and I'll say, if you can't do it, or if you have any problems, let me know, and I will help you. Or if you mess it up, it's okay, I will go to bat for you. Right? It's us collaborating on this task together. It's saying, I'm a participant in this with you. Right? That's what collaboration is. Okay, rational persuasion is the next one. So Joe, what do you think this is?
Like, kind of like a common sense type of approach. Like, it's very rational. Like, I'm not wasting your time or energy. Like, this is gonna like improve like the organization. It's gonna help you out, me out. Like, well, like we're all like kind of like a part of it.
Absolutely. Hey, look, this is the most efficient way to do this. If you do this, it's going to help the organization by X, Y, Z. Okay? So it's just a rational approach, just like you said. All right, so after rational persuasion is something called apprising. So this is kind of like rational persuasion. But what apprising is saying, look, if you do this, it's going to be better for you in the long run. Right? It's not exchange. It's not saying, if you do this and I give you this. It's saying, look, if you do this, and maybe in the way that I'm telling you to do it, it's going to help you in the long run. It's for your benefit, right? It's going to benefit you. All right, apprising. Next is inspirational appeals. So you guys were all at the town hall yesterday? Or the State of the Battalion brief? Inspirational appeals. So this is what the battalion commander was using, right? Hey, look, we are the Lethal Warrior Battalion. Right? We get after it. You guys are the best soldiers in the Army, right? Appealing to people's sort of emotions, getting after it in that way. Does that make sense? Inspirational appeals. Okay, and then the last one is something called participation. Participation. Okay, participation is another thing that you would use a lot with peer leadership. It's saying, look, I've designed this process, or I have an idea for a process. And I would like you to participate in that process with me, right? I have this new system. It would be like, let's say I came up with a new system for how to track awards or something like that. And then I go to the other company commanders and say, hey man, I've created this system for the S1 that I think would help them track awards. Would you like to participate in the system with me? Right? I'm influencing them that way. And you could say that kind of runs with maybe rational persuasion, like look at or apprising. It'll help you in this way. It'll make you more efficient. But participation is asking someone to participate with you in a system. Okay, so these are the 9 doctrinal methods of influence. These aren't necessarily hard and fast. A lot of these run together. And in one sentence, you could use maybe 3 or 4 methods of influence. Okay, so when I tell someone to do something, and I don't like to say tell, I say ask. Unless it's like a mission or something tactical, right? So I ask someone to do something because I'm more of a commitment-based leader. But we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so a lot of these will run together, right? Look, do this thing because it's efficient and it's going to help you, and if you do it, then I'll give you this. One sentence, I just use 3 doctrinal methods of influence. Does that make sense? So it's not like, look, I'm just going to use this one method when I'm influencing this person. You can use a variety of different methods. Okay. So the Army says that the methods of influence run along a continuum. Continuum of compliance on one side and commitment on the other. It runs along a continuum from compliance to commitment. Now, when you look at pressure, do this or I'm going to do this to you. Do you think that that's compliance-based or commitment-based? It's compliance-based, right? So we'd probably put that, if we number these, right, 1, we probably would put that somewhere in here. Right? Now, if we say legitimating, do this because I'm a captain and you're a lieutenant. You have to do what I say. Right? It's gonna land somewhere on this continuum. Where do you think it would fall?
Towards the compliance.
Probably towards compliance. It's not saying, hey, I'm going to do something bad if you don't do what I say, but it's probably more on the compliance end. Okay? And then exchange. Okay, so a lot of times it depends on how you say something, right? That's why there's a lot of nuance to this. It's not hard and fast. And that's why I think the Army's doctrine is really good, because it does a good job describing what these are, but it doesn't necessarily dictate this exactly what it is. So if I say, hey, Tom, look, I need you to do this. You're not going home until it's done. Okay, I need you to go and do it. Right? That's pressure. Saying, look, you're not leaving until this is done. Right? That's different than, Tom, go do this. You have until the end of the day. If you don't do it, you're going to be outside digging trenches. Right? Those are both pressure, but they probably don't fall the exact same place on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? And just like that, pressure could be more towards the commitment end, depending on how you do legitimating. Right? TJ, I'm a captain, you're a lieutenant, you have to do what I say, go do it. Right? That could be a lot different than, TJ, this task is really important. If you don't get it done, I'm going to have to give you a negative counseling statement. Right? That's more commitment-based than, that method of pressure is more commitment-based than a legitimating way and saying it that way. Does that make sense? Do you guys see how tone and the way you say something can affect where it falls on the spectrum? Okay. So we can just we'll just sort of throw them all up here, right? So we'll put 3 for exchange, and maybe personal appeals is somewhere in here. And again, these are windows, right? There's windows. They're not necessarily dots. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All right, so all these methods of influence fall somewhere on this spectrum. So the way that I like to describe this, and now I'm moving from doctrine into my analysis of doctrine and how I think it's the best way to apply it. Okay, because this isn't necessarily in the manual what I'm about to show you. What I have painted for a vision for leaders in this company is that I want you right in the middle. That when you are using these methods of influence, it washes out for you to be in the middle. Okay? Now, why is it that we're not all the way over here on the commitment end or on the compliance end?
What do you think? I think it depends on the task at hand and how you're going to communicate in terms of there's like a deadline, like a timeline, like certain tasking condition or standard.
Absolutely. So you take the situation into account.
Plus, also, if you're all the way at one end of the spectrum, you kind of become blinded to, like, if I'm just blinded fully on the fact that, like, you're giving me, if I'm fully committed, then that means, like, I'm kind of blinded on the side, like, hey, is there something that he's maybe missing or that he's dropping? Or
Sure.
Kind of like that back and forth feedback.
So what if you were a leader that only used inspirational appeals and participation?
You're going to kind of get run over.
You're going to get, what? Say it again.
You're going to get run over.
You're going to get run over, right? Someone's going to look at you and they're going to think you're weak. You're not going to have control, right? But what if you just use pressure and legitimating all the time?
Then they're just going to do the bare minimum. They're not really going to be thinking for themselves.
People are going to be afraid. People are going to be afraid to take initiative, right? So what I like to say down here is with compliance, someone who just does compliance, who only focuses on compliance, I would call a tyrant.
That type of leader, and I would call that type of leader a tyrant. Completely unreasonable, never using any of these, always using these 3, right? In some way, shape, or fashion. Now on the other side, on the commitment side, someone who doesn't know how to get performance out of people, doesn't know how to push people, I would call that person, the name I would use is a milquetoast. Okay, milquetoast. In the middle, right in the middle, I would call that person a leader. Okay, so how do you determine whether you're on this side, or somewhere in the middle? Well, you look at the frequency at which you use these methods of influence. How often do you use them, right? So if you're a leader who uses these a lot, doesn't use these, and then uses these a lot, what does that sound like to you? Bipolar, right? Has anyone seen that type of guy before? He's up there like screaming and getting after people, or he's like all super nice, like trying to like make friends with people, right? Everyone's afraid. Which way is this guy going to go today, right? That's a bipolar leader. Okay, well, if you have a leader who is focusing on these types of things, rational persuasion, collaboration, personal appeals, and then uses these infrequently, so his curve would look kind of like this, right? That's really what you're looking for. He has the ability to use these commitment and compliance-based methods of influence, but he's focusing on building that team, right? He's focused on building commitment, and that's ultimately what he's trying to get after, right? He's using rational persuasion, collaboration, personal appeals more frequently. Less frequently, he's using pressure, legitimating, and exchange, and less frequently, he's using uprising, inspirational appeals, participation. Does that make sense? Have I lost anybody? Okay. So what I would say for you leaders here is draw this diagram for yourself, and as you go throughout the day, once you tell someone to do something or you exert some influence in some way, shape, or form, mark where you think that action was, right? It's a great way to track. It's like journaling, right? If you just yelled at Private Snuffy because he messed something up, and you told him if he does it again, then he's going to be running laps or something, that's down here, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with using methods of compliance or methods of commitment. It's about frequency. It's about long-term trends, okay? And if you're not the type of leader who uses these three, rational persuasion, collaboration, and personal appeals, I'd recommend you give it a shot, right? Give it a try. Okay, so what we're going to talk about next is how this fits into the organization at large. Okay, do I still have everybody? Okay. I draw this little graph. On the x-axis, I put commitment. And on the y-axis, I put compliance. Okay. Vision. Okay, now again, I'm taking Army doctrine and applying it the best way, the way best to apply it. Okay, so on the x-axis here we have commitment, and on the y-axis we have compliance. Okay? Down the middle, this is how an organization, how you view your organization. Now remember how I said everything that you do as an individual leader falls somewhere along this scale of compliance to commitment, right? Every single action of a leader in an organization falls somewhere in this scale. Right? A compliance-based method of influence falls closer to the y-axis, and a commitment-based one falls closer to the x-axis. And what you do is you can aggregate and add together all of the different things that leaders in an organization does, and you can start to diagnose problems with that organization. Right? So a leader comes in and they provide a vision for the organization. Right? A vision. Now I would say Mission Command is a really good vision that you can use, right? This is what we want to get to. We want to build a cohesive team through mutual trust, right? We want to create shared understanding. We want to encourage people to exercise discipline and initiative and accept prudent risk. Okay, that's a vision that you can use for your organization. So we'll just use that for purposes of this. And you want to create your own vision, right? Ours here in Baker Company right now is trust and discipline, right? That's what we're getting to. Everybody trusts everybody, and everybody has discipline and disciplines the people around them, right? So as you move closer to that vision, everything leaders do falls somewhere along this scale, right? So let's say you first take over and you're getting ready to go to the field. All right, well, you have timelines that you need to meet, right? There's things that you have to get done. So everything that happens as leaders hit this individual scale, organizationally, they're moving towards compliance, right? So maybe they get in the field, they issue a bunch of op orders, they do a lot of things. All right, now they're coming out of the field, right? They're doing their counseling, they're doing their AARs, right? Maybe they're focused more on commitment down here. Right? They've moved closer to that commitment scale. By using rational persuasion, they have time to explain things. They're not under so much pressure. Right? So they're using those commitment-based methods of influence. They're building teamwork. Hey guys, we just did some amazing things out in the field, and you guys should be proud. Inspirational appeals, right? Hey, there's this, maybe the XO comes out with platoon leaders. Hey, there's this system that I've designed for recovery that I think is going to benefit all of us. Would you guys be interested in doing that? So you see what I'm saying? How the situation dictates the type of method of influence that you're going to be using. So it moves closer to commitment. And then maybe you're getting ready to go back out to the field, or you're starting to do something else and timelines start to matter, right? You start being more compliance-based, or you go on deployment, right? And as you're weaving through this, you're oscillating around this ideal, right? The ideal organization is this straight arrow all the way up to everyone always balances commitment and compliance perfectly. Is that ever going to happen in an organization? No, it's never going to happen, right? But you're going to oscillate around it, right? You're going to sort of bounce around it, if that makes sense. Okay, now let's talk about some sicknesses or some pathologies that I guarantee some people have seen before. Okay, now who's been in an organization where people cannot stand the leadership, they're scared to take initiative, they just say screw it, they have zero morale, and people are constantly coming down on them? Has it everyone's been? Yeah, hopefully not this organization. Okay, that means that those leaders have fallen outside the boundaries, right? They've drifted away from where their mission or from where their vision should be, right? They've drifted outside the box. So some things some indicators that your organization is failing along this scale would be like low morale. Right, that'd be one thing. So people quit. They would describe the leadership as toxic. All right, that would be an indicator that your organization's leaders are focused way too much on compliance. They're acting down here. They're doing these things. They're not building commitment to the organization. There's no long-term commitment. This organization will fail. Ultimately, they will fail. Whether on the battlefield or in training, they're going to fail. All right, now let's go the other way. Let's say you have an organization who everything that they do is out here, right? Everything is, they can't ever get anything done, right? Well, how would you describe an organization where you just have super weak leaders? No one knows what is going on.
No discipline.
Undisciplined.
What's that?
No discipline.
Right, so I would say no discipline, right? What else would you say? Maybe fraternization? Did you say something, sorry, Butterfield?
I said undisciplined as well.
Okay. Yeah, no discipline, fraternization. I would say that there are safety hazards here because people aren't acting in accordance with proper safety protocols. Right? This is how you know that your organization or you as a leader is failing. You're not balancing commitment and compliance. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is a way to think about leadership. This is how I think the best way to apply Army leadership is. Now, we're going to talk about something that I like to go over in these classes, which is 360-degree leadership. Okay, this is an enormously important topic because we tend to think of leadership in terms of hierarchy, right? We tend to think of it in terms of the leader is at the top, and then he has the organization underneath him. So maybe he has some platoon leaders and platoon sergeants if you're a company commander, or he has, and then after that he's got squad leaders, and then maybe after that he's got team leaders, and then maybe inside of those teams there's like a senior PFC or something, right? So this is how we tend to think of leadership in this very top-down idea. The leader leads that organization. What I would submit to you is leadership is not top-down at all, and nor should it be top-down. Leadership should be 360 degrees. And what I mean by that is, I'll use myself as an example. So when I tell platoon leaders what to do, or we collaborate on a task, I always ask for their feedback. And I try to, as much as possible, give my intent about what I want to happen, not how for it to happen. And what I let the platoon leaders do is, again, when you look at the definition of leadership, is I allow them to influence me by giving me purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish a mission or improve the organization. Right? So it's not just the leader acting in a top-down manner, getting people to follow him. It's also you using the process of influencing to influence your peers and to influence your superiors. Right? And that's an extremely important topic because as you guys rise through the ranks, don't take everything onto yourself. You can distribute that pressure and you can distribute that power to people in your organization and give them the ability to lead you. You have to make them comfortable leading you. Does that make sense? Now this is a sort of radical topic for the Army because we never think of it in terms of subordinates leading their leaders, right? Have you ever heard that before? Maybe you have, I don't know. No, okay, shake your head down. Yeah, I had never heard of that before, right? Before 360-degree leadership. So you as leaders have to train your subordinates to lead you, to give you good advice, to give you good feedback. And you have to train yourself to learn how to use it, right? To learn how to internalize it, pull the best out of what they're saying, and then go with that. A lot of the times, if you feed them the right information, they'll come back to you with what you wanted to do anyway. Does that make sense? And it has to do with your peers as well. You look to your left and right, and when you're talking about influencing your boss, you think you can use pressure, legitimating exchange to influence your boss? No. No, right? You can't. You may be able to use some of the 3 in the middle and then 3 on the right-hand side of the graph, right? This is really about telling, this is about asking, and this is about balancing the two. Okay, so usually when you're talking to your boss, these are generally what you're going to do. So you want to lead your boss. Don't just accept what you're given. analyze it critically, right? That's one of the tenets of Army leadership, is to think leaders, or teach leaders to think critically and creatively. If you're not doing that as a leader, to let your soldiers think critically and creatively, you're not acting in accordance with what the Army says. Okay. All right. So that is more or less it. Does anyone have any questions?
Let's take a quick look at 10 principles of military leadership and how civilians and civilian organizations might benefit from applying these principles. An effective military leader does not micromanage. He or she trusts his subordinates to accomplish the mission. They do, however, provide direction, guidance, and priorities. This is codified in what we call the commander's intent. The leader doesn't dictate every detail or how a mission is accomplished. He simply gives the left and right limits, a few pieces of general guidance, and points them in the right direction. Since the leader understands the big picture, he might know something that the subordinates do not. He will address this while giving his guidance. For example, the follow-on force arrives at 0600 in the morning, so the bridge absolutely must be secured by 0530. Likewise, civilian leaders could benefit by not telling their subordinates exactly how to do something. Rather, they should give direction, guidance, and priorities, sit back and watch their subordinates succeed. The business model of the U.S. military is to have a team of experts led by a generalist. The leader is the generalist. His staff and his subordinates are the subject matter experts. The conductor might not know how to play every instrument, but for sure he knows how to integrate them together to create a symphonic masterpiece. Let's take a closer look at the members of the Military Staff Symphony Orchestra. Every military higher headquarters is composed of staff members. The SJA, or Staff Judge Advocate, is the unit's lawyer. The S1, or Staff Office 1, manages personnel or human resources. S2 is intelligence. S3 is operations, S4 is logistics, 5 is planning, 6 is communications, 7 is training, exercise, and readiness, or TREX, 8 is finance, and 9 is CMO, or civil military operations. A headquarters with a general officer as its commander will call their staff G1 through G9, as in G for general officer. A joint staff will call their sections J1 through J9, as in joint 1 through joint 9. Civilian organizations all could benefit from having a lawyer, a human resource officer, an intel or security manager, a CEO to manage day-to-day operations, a logistics team, network and IT professionals, and a chief financial officer. If your business is too small to have all of these sections, then consider outsourcing their staff expertise a few hours or days each year to ensure that your business is efficient and effective. The doctrinal rule is that each military leader is able to command 3 to 5 subordinate units. This goes for a carrier battle group or for a company commander with 3 platoons. As we discussed earlier, the Chief of Staff may be in charge of 5 to 10 different staff sections, but when it comes to leadership and operations, the recommended military span of control is 3 to 5. If you control any more than 5 operational elements of your business, it is likely that you will become overwhelmed and incapable of effectively leading the business. Consider reorganizing your staff so that your span of control is 3 to 5. Every military section has a standing operating procedure, or SOP. If you are a tactical unit, then you have a tactical SOP, or TACSOP, which explains how you're alerted, mobilized, deployed, and fight. If you have a staff section, let's say for example the training officer in the S3 operations section, then you will have a training SOP, which outlines who to contact for attending schools and follow-on training, how to request a range, and how to request ammo for that range. Each and every section of an effective unit has an SOP. Nowadays, these SOPs are typed up online and stored in a SharePoint folder on the network. But when I was a young officer, the SOPs were printed in 3-ring binder continuity books, and you were required to read them the day you arrived to the new unit. I am convinced that every civilian organization would be better off if each section had a short continuity book which explained how they function and who are their points of contact. That way people can quickly learn what to expect and anyone can step up or cover down on responsibilities when a fellow colleague is sick or on vacation. The U.S. military has a very strict format and a regimented process for planning missions. The Military Decision-Making Process, or MDMP, is a 7-step process. Step 2, Mission Analysis, has 18 tasks. I don't want to get into all of these different tasks, but I want to highlight that there is a deliberate planning sequence that all officers and senior NCOs are trained to know and use. Whether you are a Marine Raider, or a SEAL, or a pilot, or a staff officer in Ranger Bat, every proper military unit will use the MDMP as a guideline for planning the future. Private individuals and civilian organizations would benefit from a standardized and deliberate planning process for all important future decisions and initiatives. Military communication is often a matter of life and death. You can't afford to make a communication error. One of the best techniques that the military uses to verify that the message given is the message received is called the back brief. When a headquarters publishes an order, they make their subordinate units back brief what they understand their mission to be, the timeline, the task, and purpose. This technique has so many applications. Imagine you're in a dire situation and your boss says, "Take the hill, whatever the cost." You back brief them. "Roger that, boss. We'll take the hill, whatever the cost." Imagine your boss tells you to do A, then B, skip C, then do D, part 1. Back brief him quickly to put his mind at ease and to show that you understand what the mission is. "Boss, I understand that I need to do A, then B, skip C, and do D, part 1. This ensures effective communication. Tell your kids that after the movie is over, you will meet them at 8:15 p.m. at the far side of the parking lot by the tennis court. Make them back brief you. Okay, Dad, fine. I'll meet you at 8:15 p.m. on the far side of the parking lot by the tennis court." Now you have an effective link-up plan. Although the U.S. military will work you like a dog, it does provide opportunities for technical, educational, and professional development. I call this Continuous Professional Development, or CPD. Enlisted men and women go to basic and advanced leadership schools, the Sergeant Major's Academy, and are even given time off for degree completion. Officers go to the basic and advanced courses for their branch, the Combined Armed Service Staff School, or the Intermediate Learning Objective, ILE, the War College, and have opportunities to go to grad school. Signal officers and specialists get all kinds of Microsoft networking and SharePoint certificates. Imagine how successful you would be if you devoted a quarter or an eighth of your time developing your subordinates to make them better leaders and more competent workers. Let's move on to combined and joint operations. Joint means that you're working with other branches of the military. Combined means that you are working with military forces from another country. No matter how hard you try, you cannot do it alone. The military is becoming more joint and combined every day. Gone are the days when the Army invaded something on their own. Nowadays, Army forces always work with the Air Force, Navy, and the Marines. They always work alongside of military forces from other countries. This leads to synergy and legitimacy. Synergy allows the collective, combined, and joint effects to be greater than the sum of the individual efforts. The work of a coalition is always more legitimate than a unilateral or bilateral national engagement. The civilian application of this principle is collaboration. When you work with other companies or other offices, you almost always have more success than if you did it all on your own. Think of Supreme partnered with Louis Vuitton to make high-end fashion clothes more reachable to the younger crowd. Think of how easy it is to integrate Instagram into your Facebook, or your YouTube into your Gmail and AdWords. Successful businesses seeking to improve should always look for opportunities to collaborate. One of the virtues of the military is that you learn that it's not about you, it's about the team. The team is more important than the individual. This is why heroes jump on hand grenades and sacrifice themselves for those that they love and they serve with on their left and right. This is why soldiers postpone medical treatment and evacuation to keep fighting the enemy even though they're injured. When something happens to a member of the team, they are missed, but they are replaced. This goes for the rifleman and for the commander. Everyone is replaceable. the team is more important than the individual. Military service inherently creates this team mentality. This is why so many veterans miss the purpose and sense of belonging that they had when they were in the military. Civilian companies should deliberately plan and invest time and money to build their team. A team is always more successful than individuals. Okay, there you have it. 10 principles of military leadership. I want to be the first to admit that this list is not conclusive, but I also need to highlight that these principles of military leadership are tools that you can and should use to be a more effective leader in your family, at your job site, and in your life. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep on learning, and to forward this video to a friend who needs to see this. Life is a special operation. Are you ready for it?
Today we're going to be talking about Army leadership. A lot of what I'm going to present in this video is taken from Army Doctrine Publication 6-22, which was released in July 2019. But I also have my own spin and interpretation about how to make some of these ideas more actionable. This video is the condensed version of a 30-minute lecture that I give to junior leaders under my command. In the lecture, I go into a lot more detail, so if you are interested, you can watch it here. In this video, I'm going to help you bridge the gap between learning about leadership and taking action by teaching you some techniques that I've learned as an Army officer. First, let's start with the definition. Leadership is the activity of influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. Leadership is an activity. It's not a trait you were born with or something that's innate. And it's not just having a position of authority. It's an action. The action of leading. Because it's an activity, it's open to everyone. Anyone can be taught to be a leader and can improve their ability to lead. While some natural talent is always helpful, leadership is something that improves with time and practice. But we all know the old saying, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to practice. So, leadership is the activity of influencing people. So, how do you influence someone? According to ADP 6-22, there are 9 basic methods of influence. Number 1 is pressure. Pressure occurs when leaders use explicit demands to achieve compliance, such as establishing deadlines for the completion of tasks and communicating negative consequences for those not met. Number 2 is legitimating, which is when leaders establish their authority as the basis for a request. Number 3 is exchange, which is when leaders provide incentives for gaining a higher level of compliance with orders or instructions. Number 4 is personal appeals. This is when the leader asks for a subordinate's support based upon their personal or long-standing professional relationship, generally out of loyalty. Number 5 is collaboration. This occurs when the leader engages with subordinates or peers to apply influence by contributing to the outcome. The leader is making a commitment more attractive to followers by stepping in and resolving problems, offering additional resources, or sharing in the work. Number 6 is rational persuasion. This requires providing a broader context, logical argument, or explanations showing how a request is relevant to the goal and why something should or must be done. Number 7 is apprising. This is when the leader explains why an order or request will benefit a subordinate or team, such as explaining how performing a task a certain way will save time. Number 8 is inspirational appeals. This occurs when the leader creates enthusiasm for a request by arousing strong emotions in support of a decision they must make or have already made. Number 9, participation occurs when leaders ask others to join them in determining how best to address a problem or meet an objective. There's a lot more to each of these methods of influence that you can read about in Chapter 5 of ADP 6-22. The link is in the description. Field Manual 6-22 states that, quote, Army leaders can draw on a variety of techniques to influence others, ranging from obtaining compliance to building commitment to a cause or organization. Specific techniques for influence fall along a continuum. The continuum that the manual references ranges from pure compliance on one end and pure commitment on the other. All the methods of influence that we discussed and how they are used fall somewhere along the continuum. On the graph, we have compliance-based methods on the left-hand side and commitment-based methods on the right-hand side. The methods themselves tend to be compliance or commitment-based, but how they are used also affects their place on the continuum. If a leader needs to use the method of pressure, there's a difference between saying, "Bob, get it done by the end of the day or I will write you up," and saying, "Bob, this task is really important, and if it's not completed by the end of the day, I'm going to write you up." Although they are both a form of pressure, the first is way farther towards compliance. Additionally, leaders will typically use a combination of influence methods when working with their subordinates or employees. Sometimes the combination can be in the same sentence. For example, "Okay, team, it would mean a lot to me personally if we can meet this goal. And if we do, then everyone gets a raise. This is the best team I've ever served on, and I know we can do it." A leader that uses mostly compliance-based methods of influence, I call a tyrant. A tyrant wants to be feared. A leader that uses only commitment-based methods on the right-hand side, I call a milquetoast. They want to be liked or loved by the people they lead, and they're often afraid to be direct. You likely have had experience with these two types of people, and those experiences are rarely pleasant. You might even be one of those types of people yourself, and that's okay. That's why I made this video. The person who focuses on those methods in the middle, but has the ability to use the methods on either end of the spectrum, is a true leader. A leader commands respect. Real respect is a mixture of both fear and love. A skilled leader correctly uses the method of influence appropriate to the situation, but always harmonizes compliance-based methods and commitment-based methods of influence. It's important to remember that this tool is qualitative, not quantitative. Leadership isn't a math problem, and it's not about balancing the methods of compliance and commitment. It's about harmonizing them. This is something that I've changed since I started giving this lecture. If it was about balance, a bipolar leader who uses only methods on either end of the spectrum could theoretically be balanced. But finding harmony is about using the right method for the situation and finding an equilibrium in the middle of the continuum. Knowing the methods of influence is all well and good, but if you're struggling as a leader, it's probably because you aren't properly harmonizing between compliance and commitment. So here's where I'm going to give you the real homework. Get a pen and paper and copy down the graph that you see on the screen. Keep the graph with you throughout the day, and anytime that you exert some influence on someone, usually someone that works for you, just make a little mark on the line above the method of influence that you used. If you want to go to the next level, then have one of your coworkers watch this video and then observe you for a few days and give you some feedback. If you're struggling as a leader to earn respect in the workplace because you're trying too hard to be liked and using commitment-based methods too often, then you may need to practice putting some pressure on your team. If you know that you're kind of a mean person and you put a lot of pressure on people, try thinking of ways to use rational persuasion or collaboration as you start trying to build commitment. A lot of leadership gurus focus on mindset, but I'm not a guru, and my focus is on behavior, not on mindset. If you want to become a better leader, then focus your behavior every day on harmonizing compliance and commitment. Keep in touch by signing up for my free email newsletter and let me know if this worked for you. The link is in the description. I write a lot about leadership, complexity, uncertainty, history, strategy, and a bunch of other stuff. The newsletters are usually just a few paragraphs that I send out once or twice a month, but replying to the newsletter is the easiest way to get in contact with me. Thanks for watching.